Do it. The order sliced through the static as Mira Chen's ship emerged from the asteroid's shadow, guns hot. Above Valara Prime, an Aurelian dreadnought turned. Too late. 3 stolen mining rigs, strapped with volatile plasma charges, slammed into its underbelly. The explosion painted the sky in white fire. Below, civilians cheered from burning rooftops, fists raised against a tyrant who thought Earth would kneel. Across the stars, Legate Kalis Vox watched the footage in silence, until he smiled. They've chosen war. He turned to his officers. Then we'll answer with fire, until their oceans boil. The dreadnought cracked open like a rotting fruit. From the bridge of the Aegis blade, Commander Mira Chen watched the explosion bloom across the void. Brilliant, violent, final. 3 converted ore haulers, each loaded with unstable plasma canisters, had just turned an Imperial warship into a burning grave. She didn't flinch. Her voice stayed level as she spoke into her headset. Pull back, signal all units, vanish, no heroics. The rebel fleet, if it could be called that, scattered into the asteroid shadows like smoke in the wind. Converted freighters, a few salvaged corvettes, nothing that could survive a direct fight. But today wasn't about survival. Today was a message. Casualty report? She asked. Lieutenant Voss, her wiry second-in-command, tapped at a flickering console. 3 ships lost, 12 dead, 146 civilians evacuated before the blast. That's a win, by our standards. Mira's jaw tightened. Her standards used to be higher. Outside the viewport, Valara Prime turned slowly below. A planet of crimson deserts and blackened cities, bled dry by the Empire's crystal. Quotas. What they hadn't taken, they'd burned. What they couldn't burn, they'd enslave. A chirp from the comms. High-priority transmission. Aurelian seal. Voss gave her a sidelong look. It's him. Mira didn't need to ask who. She accepted. The signal. Legate Kalis Vox appeared in a shroud of golden hollow light, armored in ceremonial crimson, his expression carved from disdain. Commander Chen, he said, voice smooth as polished glass. Impressive, for savages. Mira didn't reply. Silence unnerved the powerful more than rage. Vox continued, unbothered. The Emperor has decreed that all remaining crystal on Valara Prime be surrendered within 20 cycles. Failure to comply will result in sterilization protocols. Total surface cleanse. Voss inhaled sharply. Mira didn't move. Vox tilted his head. You understand what that means, don't you? She nodded. You'll commit genocide to mine a rock. Will ensure order. Your people, emotional, erratic, are incapable of managing vital resources. The galaxy cannot be held hostage by chaos. Mira stepped forward, her voice like flint. You burned our colonies, bombed hospitals, took children as workers. Vox smiled faintly, and still, you resist. She stared at him. Then slowly, she leaned in toward the projection. Tell your Emperor. Her voice was ice. Earth doesn't kneel. The hollow snapped off. For a moment, no one on the bridge moved. The silence was heavier than vacuum. Then Voss let out a low whistle. Well, that's that. Mira turned back to the viewport. Somewhere below, rebels were still smuggling families into tunnels. Kids were still coughing in red dust. The Empire didn't see them, just quotas. She saw everyone. Voss spoke again, softer. You know what he'll do now. I do, she said. So what's the plan? She didn't answer right away. She studied. The stars above the planet's curve, Aurelian warships backlit by artificial sunlight, cold and waiting. She finally replied. We make him regret asking. Hours later, she stood alone in the command room of the underground base, hollowed, from a mountain of iron ore, now barely held together by ancient welds and hope. She pulled up the galactic map. Dozens of systems, all red, occupied, enslaved, broken. But she wasn't looking at the red. She was looking at the gray zones, the places the Empire ignored, forgotten moons, fractured trade routes, dead sectors. Crawling with pirates, smugglers, old enemies with long grudges, she began marking points. A plan, crude and suicidal, formed, one spark at a time. Not a war, not yet. Just fire. Later, in the shadow of the comms relay, Voss found her checking ship logs. "You should sleep," he said. "Later," she replied. He handed her a tin mug. Synthetic caffeine. Smelled like old motor oil. She drank it anyway. "Do you really think we can win?" he asked quietly. Mira didn't answer. He continued. "Earth's fractured. The colonies are starving. Most of the galaxy thinks we're extinct. The Empire has 1,000 ships. We have Tavish," she said. Voss raised an eyebrow. "A drunk smuggler with 3 working engines. We have Velrix, a defecting alien with a superiority complex." Mira looked up. "We have something they don't. We have the reason." Voss studied her for a long moment. "You're really going to light the fuse?" She nodded. "And I'm going to let them watch it burn." As the Aegis blade rose from the surface and cloaked behind the broken rings of Valara, Mira stood on the deck, staring into the void. Somewhere, out there, Kalis Vox would be watching too, arrogant, confident, certain. Let him be. By the time he realized what she was doing, it would already be too late. She whispered under her breath, not to Voss, not to the crew, not even to herself, to the Empire. "You should have left us alone." Then she turned away from the stars, and the war began. The wind on Mira's face wasn't real. Valara's atmosphere filters simulated a breeze, but the scent carried dust and heat, not life. She stood on the edge of a jagged cliff overlooking the refugee quarter, thousands packed into makeshift domes, children weaving through debris, adults staring skyward at warships they couldn't see but always felt. They all knew what was coming, so did she. Behind her, footsteps, Voss again, no words, just his quiet presence. She spoke without turning. "This planet's dying." Voss folded his arms. "Then it's lucky it has someone who bites back." Gap didn't smile. "I was 8 when the Aurelians came to Farside Station," she said. "They bombed the solar arrays first, no warning. Power died, then air, lights, heat. We lasted 3 days in the dark. My brother made it to the evac tube. I didn't." Voss looked down. "How'd you survive?" "I didn't," she said. "Not the part that mattered." A beep from her wrist pad saved them both from silence. The signal was clear. It was time. The Resistance Council chamber was buried beneath layers of rusted alloy and scorched shielding, a bunker repurposed from an old mining drill command. Dim lights flickered overhead. No fanfare, no ceremony. Just war and the people reckless enough to start it. Tavish Hale arrived first, late as usual, chewing on a piece of dried fruit and wearing a coat stitched from at least 3 uniforms that weren't his. "Commander Chen," he said, bowing, with theatrical flair. "Pleasure as always. Love what you've done with the crater." Velrix entered next, tall, lithe, cloaked in a silk wrap that shimmered blue-black in the low light. One arm bore the ceremonial scars of the Sarun caste, most of which marked exile. He said nothing, just watched. The last to arrive was Captain Rowan, former Aurelian officer disgraced after his fleet lost to a rebel uprising near the Jalari cluster. Mira had intercepted his escape pod herself. He didn't salute, just grunted. Mira stood at the head of the table and got to the point. "The Empire's demands are clear. We surrender everything or they scorch Valara." No one spoke. She continued. If we do nothing, we die. If we fight alone, we die slower. So we don't fight alone. Tavish leaned back, unimpressed. You planning to call in the galactic nice guys? Last I heard, they closed shop after the Empire turned their capital into scrap. Velrix's voice was smooth and sharp. You want to unite scavengers and cowards across a dozen sectors? With what? Hope and charisma? No, Mira said. With blood. They quieted. She activated the map. Red-marked systems blinking like dying stars. She zoomed in on one sector. Neutral, ignored, unimportant. But inside it were trade routes, black market corridors, fuel depots. She pointed. We hit here first, then here. Then broadcast every victory, every truth the Empire buries. We turn the outer worlds into fire beacons. Rowan frowned. That invites extermination. It invites attention, Mira snapped. The Empire spreads fear to control. We spread truth to unravel it. People are angry. They just need a direction. Tavish sighed, rubbing his eyes. You want a rebellion? I want an ignition point, Mira said. I want the galaxy to see that we bleed, yes. But we bleed fighting. Velrix finally spoke. And if the spark dies before it reaches dry kindling? Mira looked him dead in the eye. Then we make more sparks. The next morning, Mira walked the edge of Hangar C, watching crews load supplies into rust-covered freighters. Tavish stood atop a crate barking insults at his own crew, alternating between humor and barely veiled threats. She approached. Tell me you're in. He looked down at her, smirked. I'm in, mostly for the chaos, but also because I've got debts and you might accidentally blow up some of the people I owe. She shook her head. You've got 2 ships that can fly and a 3rd that rattles. In vacuum. I've got 3 weapons of poetic irony, he corrected. She turned to walk away. He followed. Listen, he said, lowering his voice. What happens if this does work? If people rise up? Then we make it matter. He looked at her for a beat, serious now. Don't forget why you're doing this, Mira. It's not just about fire. It's about what survives after. I haven't forgotten, she said quietly. Later, she found Velrix in the Eastern Canyon, watching birds circle over a toxic pool that used to be a lake. You still think I'm wrong? She asked. I think you're dangerous, he replied. But that may be what we need. She watched the birds in silence. He added, You know my people once had an empire too. I read the files. It fell because we believed we were permanent. She turned to him. And the Aurelians? They believe they are inevitable. She nodded slowly. Let's make them obsolete. That night, in her quarters, Mira pulled out an old photo. 3 people stood in it. Her mother, her brother, and a younger version of herself smiling with a handmade starship model in her hands. That girl didn't know what war smelled like? She set the photo down, tapped the transmitter. This is Commander, Mira Chen. If you're hearing this, you've already seen what they did to us, to your colony, your world. You know what it's like to lose everything. Her voice never shook. We are not broken. We are not finished. And we are not afraid. Join us. Light the match. Let them feel what we felt. She ended the transmission. The fire had begun. The station was half dead before they touched down. Its skeletal hull floated near the red dwarf star in a slow, terminal drift, scorch marks along the spine, antennae snapped clean off, cargo modules gutted like scavenged prey, no flags, no signals, no questions, just emptiness waiting to be filled with violence. Perfect. Mira stood behind Tavish on the bridge of the Glass Hound, the smuggler's flagship. The cockpit was cramped, hot, and smelled faintly of fried capacitors. You sure this place still has fuel cells? She asked, watching the spinning wreck outside. Tavish adjusted the throttle with one hand and slapped a blinking gauge with the other. I'm sure it used to. That wasn't the question. He grinned without looking at her. Hope is a fuel source, right? She exhaled through her nose, watching the external feed flicker as they locked onto the dock's magnetic clamp. From the corner, Velrix's voice slithered in, measured, amused. If this is your plan to inspire rebellion, it's certainly poetic. Broken bones of forgotten stations. Heroic. Mira didn't look at him. It's where the Empire isn't looking. That makes it valuable. The docking clamp groaned. The ship hissed depressurization. They were in. Inside, the station was worse. Lights sputtered. Vents wheezed. The walls were etched with old blaster burns and graffiti in 6 languages, half of them dead. Mira moved with her rifle up, eyes scanning for movement. Tavish strolled. Behind her like he was on a tourist walk. "What's this place called again?" he asked. "Outpost 19. Catchy. Velrix trailed them, eyeing shadowed corners. Places like this don't die cleanly. They die hungry. Mira stopped at a rusted bulkhead. The door had been sealed with weld lines, then breached. The scars weren't recent. Inside, crates, marked with old Imperial trade seals, faded but readable. She popped one open. Fuel cells, still intact. "Jackpot," Voss's voice crackled through her comms. "Status?" "We found the cells," Mira replied. "Tag the station as cleared. Prep the runners." "Copy. Also, we've got company." She stiffened. "Who?" "Unmarked vessel just jumped in system. Big one. Power signatures suggest..." "It's military grade." "How long?" 5 minutes. Mira shut the crate. "We're not done, but we're leaving anyway." Tavish was already moving. "Back the way we came?" "No," Mira said. "We'll exit through Bay 4. Less obvious. If they're looking to pick us off, we give them a ghost trail." Velrix's eyes gleamed. "And if they're not here to shoot? Then we're not here to talk." The bay door was half-fused shut. Mira and Tavish worked together, ripping through the emergency override panel and hardwiring a bypass. Sparks lit Tavish's fingers. He didn't flinch. "I missed doors that just open," he muttered. Mira shoved the final wire into place. The door slid open halfway. Enough. As they slipped through the passage, the whole station shuddered. Voss's voice again. "That ship's launching fighters." "They spotted us." "Yup, coming fast." Mira cursed under her breath. "What are they flying?" "Modified interceptors. Fast, light. Looks like recon. No heavy payloads. Yet." She turned to Tavish. "Can the Glasshound outrun them?" Tavish gave her a crooked smile. "She can outrun regret." "Good. Then get her moving. I want you gone in 30. What about you?" "I'm not done here." Velrix tilted his head. "You're staying?" "There's a relay console." "In the comms room. I'm sending the station's nav grid to nearby rebel outposts. Let them know the Empire's not watching this sector." Tavish opened his mouth, closed it again, then finally said, "You're going to get yourself killed doing noble things. I'm counting on you to do something stupid enough to distract them." "Yeah," he sighed. "That sounds about right." By the time Mira reached the comms chamber, the fighters were in range. The hull trembled as the first shot skimmed the station. Warning fire, probably. "Still testing." She slid into the old console. Dust scattered off the screen as it blinked to life. The encryption was ancient, clunky, but it worked. She loaded the coordinates, broadcasted across narrow-band repeaters in 4 languages. Each message ended the same. "Volara fights. Earth stands. Light the match." She set it to loop. Then the console exploded. Mira was thrown backward, smoke choking her vision. The wall caved inward as a boarding pod punched through the plating. Imperial troops. She scrambled behind the console base, drew her sidearm. 4 boots hit the floor. Armored. Scanning. She didn't hesitate. 2 shots. 1 in the faceplate, 1 in the throat. A third trooper ducked, fired. The bolt clipped her shoulder, hot, searing pain, but she rolled, planted her elbow, and shot again. 3 down. The fourth rushed her. She let him. As he lunged, she shifted her weight, grabbed his arm mid-swing, and slammed his head into the steel bulkhead. Once. Twice. He dropped. She staggered back, clutching her bleeding shoulder, breathing hard. The loop was still broadcasting. That was all that mattered. Mira limped through the station's access corridors, ducking between shadows as more troopers entered. The structure groaned around her, systems failing, power dying. She reached a narrow airlock chamber and punched her override code. An escape pod released with a hiss. She climbed in, sealed the hatch, and hit launch. The pod ejected just as the station began to detonate. Targeted charges planted by the Aurelians to ensure no survivors. No salvage. From her viewport, she watched the fire bloom in slow silence. Voss's voice finally broke in. "Mira, that you? Pod 314. Scramble pickup. 1 wounded. Broadcasts live. Copy. Bringing you in." She leaned back, letting the pain settle in her arm, her head spinning from smoke and adrenaline. The Empire thought it killed a rat nest today. What it actually did was light the galaxy's oldest fuse, and for the first time in decades, someone was watching. The Saroon moon was a skeleton of metal and bone. Long ago, it had been a mining colony, gouged hollow by drills and greed, then sealed, shut when the ore ran dry. Now, its hollow heart hid something far more volatile, a fusion bomb designed to kickstart dead suns, one of the Empire's forbidden tools. Mira stared at the ancient blast doors embedded in the moon's crust. Ice gathered at the corners of, her visor. The cold bit deep, even through insulated armor. "You're sure it's still here?" she asked. Velrix, standing beside her in his sleek environmental suit, nodded once. "The Empire buried it, but never destroyed it. Their arrogance preserved it." Tavish's voice crackled through the comms. "If you're wrong and this place blows while we're inside, I just want it on record. I hated this plan." "You hate every plan," Mira replied. "Only the ones that involve dying in creative ways." She keyed the override. The doors shrieked open, revealing a dark shaft descending into the moon's core. The old elevators were dead. They'd have to climb. Without another word, Mira dropped onto the ladder and began the descent. The shaft was narrow, steep, and silent. Dust floated in zero-G like lazy ghosts. For nearly an hour they climbed, until a faint red glow pulsed below them, residual energy bleeding from the fusion chamber. They stepped onto a grated walkway suspended over a glowing core the size of a city block. Thick cables pulsed with dormant power, looping into a central orb of alloy and plasma cages. Even at a distance, Mira could feel the heat clawing through her armor. "There it is," Velrix said. "The fusion bomb. A sphere built to reignite a sun or annihilate a fleet." Tavish whistled. "How do we move that without blowing ourselves into particles?" "We don't," Mira said. "We wake it, set the trigger, then lure the Empire to orbit." Velrix raised a brow. "And how do we escape the gravity well before it erupts? Don't make a mistake," she said flatly. Tavish sighed. "God, you're terrible at pep talks." They split up, Velrix handling the bomb's energy shielding, Tavish rewiring the controls to accept external ignition commands. Mira synced her wrist pad to the relay beacon embedded in her armor. If this worked, one signal would detonate the core. If it didn't, they'd vanish without a trace. As she monitored the signal link, Mira's pad buzzed, an encrypted burst transmission from Voss. "Emergency! Roan's dead. Ambush on Calith Ring. Rebel outpost compromised. Possible mole. Orders." She felt her jaw tighten. Captain Roan had been one of the few who understood the enemy inside and out. Losing him meant more than tactics. It meant losing their edge. She keyed a direct reply. "No new ops until I return. Lock internal comms. Trust no one. Hours later, the bomb was prepped. Its pulse had stabilized, its failsafe unlocked. They ascended back through the shaft, Mira's muscles aching with every pull. At the surface, their dropship still sat cloaked under lunar rock. Mira climbed in last, sealed the hatch, and dropped into the pilot's seat. As they broke atmosphere, Tavish leaned beside her, quiet for once. "You okay?" "No," she said. He nodded. "Me neither." There was silence. The stars stretched beyond the viewport. "I lost people on Kaleth," she added. "Yeah, me too." She glanced at him. "You never talk about them." He gave a crooked smile. "That's because they're all better remembered than explained." She didn't press. Back aboard the Aegis Blade, Mira stood before a sector map. Dozens of systems flickered under Aurelian control. But now, 3 blinked red, flashes of rebellion, raids, uprisings. Word was spreading. Velrix entered the war room quietly. "Tavish is prepping decoys. He insists on painting Bite Me on one of them." "Let him." He studied her a moment. "You've changed." "No," she said. "I've just stopped apologizing." Velrix gave a small, unreadable smile. "The Saroon once believed war made gods of mortals. You're becoming something dangerous. I'm just tired of watching people die on their knees." She activated the final beacon on the fusion trigger and uploaded the coordinates into the relay. "We bait the Empire here. Let them think it's a rebel stronghold. Once the fleet's in orbit, we light the sun beneath them." Velrix nodded. "And if they bring planetary shields?" "They won't." She tapped an old communication log, a coded leak from one of Roan's final transmissions. Aurelian protocols showed they'd been pulling planetary shields to redeploy for Earth's defense. "They think we'll strike the cradle, so we strike the hand." Velrix folded his arms. "You gamble with extinction." Mira looked him, dead in the eyes. "No, I gamble with certainty." Later, Tavish met her in the observatory deck. The stars were quiet here, cold and endless. Earth was still too far to see, but the thought of it, untouched, alive, anchored her. He handed her a flask. She took a sip, burned going down, real alcohol. "You meant to do this from the beginning, didn't you?" he asked. "The bomb?" "No, the symbol. You're not trying to win this war. You're trying to make them feel it." She nodded once. "The Empire doesn't fear guns. They fear ideas. I want to give them one they can't unsee." Tavish looked at her carefully. "And what happens if we win?" She blinked. That question always felt like a luxury. "I don't know," she admitted. He smiled faintly. "Then promise me something." "What?" "If we survive, you let someone take you out for a drink that doesn't involve countdown timers." She exhaled through her nose. "If we survive, I'll even pretend you're charming." "Deal." They stared out at the void, where a trap now waited beneath the surface of a forgotten moon. And soon, the Empire would come. The Aurelian fleet arrived like a storm with no warning. Hundreds of warships punched into the system, tearing open space in perfect formation. Cruisers, dreadnoughts, interceptor wings, all drawn to the false signal Mira had planted. A fabricated rebel stronghold. A baited moon. An unlit fuse waiting beneath their feet. Mira watched it unfold from the Aegis Blade's command deck, silent. She didn't blink. Voss leaned in beside her. "It's working. Every ship we expected, plus more." She nodded once. "They overcommitted. Good. Bad if we're wrong." "We're not." The comms lit up. Tactical chatter, enemy fleet. Designations, countdown syncs. Around her, the crew moved with mechanical precision. They were tired, underpaid, scarred. But no one hesitated. Tavish's voice cut through the noise from his decoy cruiser orbiting just ahead. I see a lot of angry flying triangles out here. You sure you didn't piss off a god? Just a legate, Mira replied. I'll write him a thank you note if we live. Make it sarcastic. The enemy fleet began to deploy surface sensors. Recon drones descended toward the moon. Still no clue what slept beneath them. Time was shrinking. Mira stepped toward the holomap. Every element was in place, each piece calibrated. This wasn't an ambush, this was engineering, pain, precision, patience, all finally aligned. Voss frowned. What if they detect the fusion field? They won't. Saroon's shielding blocks the signature. They'd have to be inside the core chamber. And if they send a mining probe? Then we detonate early. Half the fleet might escape. She stared at the blinking red icons. Half is still half dead. Kalis Vox stood on the bridge. Of the Imperial flagship Vigilance Ascendant, arms folded behind his back. The trap was his. He was sure of it. Begin surface scans, he ordered. Track any heat anomalies. Pinpoint entrances. A lieutenant hesitated. Sir, long range. Scans show no structure, only anomalous tectonic readings. Vox's eyes narrowed. That is the structure. They didn't understand. He did. He'd studied humans long before war. Their defiance wasn't random. It was shaped, taught, raised like a weapon, and Mira Chen was the blade. Full planetary. Lock, he said. Launch secondary drones. Prepare precision bombardment. Behind him, stars blinked. They didn't notice the moon glowing. Tavish banked hard as a trio of interceptors broke formation and moved to engage his decoy ship. Shields buckled. Hull groaned. Could use that fuse right about now, he muttered. Mira's voice crackled in his ear. Hold course, 60 seconds. 60? Woman, I'm running out of ship. You said you could outrun regret. Turns out regret's got afterburners. He swerved again, drew them further from the center, closer to the detonation radius. You're clear, Mira said. Get out! He punched the throttle. The slipjack vanished in a blue streak toward the system's edge. God, I hope you know what you're doing. Mira stood alone in the forward chamber, wrist pad glowing with final prompts. Her finger hovered over the detonation sequence. Voss appeared at her side, holding a data chip. This was recovered from Rowan's ship, he said. It's a personal log. Might want to hear it. Play it. The audio buzzed to life, Rowan's voice low and tired. If you're hearing this, she's doing it. I saw it in her eyes. The same look I saw when Earth first bled. Not rage, not vengeance, just resolve. Be careful with her. She'll carry the fire too long if no one makes her stop. It ended. Mira stared at the stars beyond, the viewport. The fleet sat suspended, gleaming above the moon. Blind. Ready. She tapped the trigger. Below, deep inside the core, the fusion ignition roared to life. Heat spiked. Pressure surged. The dormant star reawakened beneath layers of steel and dust. Above, the ships didn't see it at first. Then the surface fractured. Then the light came. A pulse of solar fire erupted from the moon's heart, slicing upward in a column of white plasma. The first dreadnought caught in its path, disintegrated mid-transmission. Then the next. Then the next. In seconds, 24 ships were gone. No wreckage, no debris. Just ash scattered across a newborn sun. Vox screamed for evasive action, but the chain reaction had already begun. The moon tore itself apart in a radiant burst, hurling matter at impossible speed. Fire raced through formations, shredding shields, melting hulls. Fighters spiraled into each other. Behemoth vessels cracked open like eggs. He watched, helpless, as centuries of supremacy burned away. No, he whispered. No, this wasn't how... Then the viewport filled with fire, and the Vigilance Ascendant vanished. Mira watched it unfold in silence. One by one, red icons winked off her screen. Not in retreat. Not in surrender. Erased. Voss finally spoke. It's done. She didn't move. Outside, the pulse of the newborn sun flickered across the stars. The fleet that had enslaved a dozen systems was gone in minutes. She spoke, not to Voss, but to the galaxy, to every world that thought they were alone. You're not. Then she turned and walked off the deck. 3 days later, rebel signals doubled. The outposts that once feared retribution now lit the sky with defiance. Civilian uprisings in the Kalev Belt. Factory sabotage on Tryon 5. The Empire reeled, searching for answers, but there were no answers. Only a broadcast that looped across open channels. Earth did not kneel, and the Empire burned. In the quiet of her quarters, Mira sat alone. The stars were calm again. Too calm. The door chimed. Enter. Tavish stepped in, covered in soot and wrapped in a patched flight coat. He looked exhausted and alive. You didn't die, she noted. Almost did. Again. I'm making a hobby of it. He tossed her a flask. She caught it. You said if we survived, you'd pretend I was charming. She opened the flask, took a sip. Still waiting, he grinned. We'll get there. They stood there, not speaking, not needing to. Just watching the stars as they remembered what fire could do, and far beyond them, the remnants of an empire began to fracture, one spark at a time.